Democratic State Representative Rafael Anchia of Dallas, thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So first, I want to start off with the deadly shooting we saw at the Dallas ICE facility. Your thoughts about that?
The question I keep asking myself is, who are we as a country, as a community, as a society? Are we comfortable with the fact that we've got regular school shootings, that you have political violence, it seems like every month, that you have public officials being, like ICE officers being targeted with shootings. And I refuse to believe that most Americans want to live in this kind of society. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? And my thought is, if you want to reduce the risk of the gun violence that's happening, it seems like every media cycle, every day, we have to be responsible in reducing the risk of this violence. You do so through common sense gun safety measures. You make sure that you can't sell rifles in the parking lot of a big box store. That was the weapon that was used to kill police officers in what we traditionally know as 7/7 here in Dallas, right? You make sure that convicted felons like the shooter yesterday cannot get a hold of weapons. You make sure that we have good red flag laws. Because I don't believe that Americans are polarized on this issue. When you look at the polling and even when you talk to people, we should feel that it is unacceptable to have regular mass shootings in our schools. We should feel that it's unacceptable to have, whether it's a president or a state senator or a political personality, to be the subject of gun violence or assassination attempts. It should be unacceptable. So I think that's the right question. Regrettably, we're in a situation right now where everybody's trying to find blame. We want to blame this tribe, we want to blame that tribe. That's the wrong question. The right question is, what are we as Americans going to do to make sure that we live in a society that is healthy and that reduces the risk of gun violence?
And, you know, when we have seen these episodes, these political deaths, political violence, or just other shootings, whoever, people say we have to lower the temperature. Everybody, the rhetoric's got to stop.
Yeah.
Everybody says it, and then it happens all over again.
Well, it's incredibly sad. Not everybody says it, by the way. Some people like to ratchet up the violence, whether it's self-serving members of the media, self-serving politicians, people who make their money grifting online and social media, because that is what sells on some of these platforms. That's what sometimes gets people elected. In fact, we've seen notable examples where where really high-level politicians just want to point fingers instead of saying, hey, you know, let's come together as Americans. Let's make sure this doesn't happen on a regular basis. And instead of trying to assign blame to right or left or this tribe or that one, say, hey, we're going to make it a priority, either at the federal level, like we did during the last administration with bipartisan support after a school shooting, or here at the state level. You know, regrettably, we take the opposite approach at the state level. When children were massacred in Uvalde, we loosened gun regulation. There was less common sense gun safety. We weren't even able to get a bill to the House floor that would raise the age to have an assault weapon from 18 to 21, which would have made a big difference in that case. And so the people who are going to have to raise their voices are the voters. They're going to have to say, hey, this is unacceptable. I do not want to live in this type of society, and I demand of my elected officials and representatives to do something about it. Until that happens, this cycle is going to continue.
I want to also ask you about the redistricting, the whole controversy over the new congressional maps passed by the legislature now goes from the Texas Capitol over to the federal court in El Paso. And Democrats and the plaintiffs in the case have argued, you yourself have said it, that these new maps are unconstitutional, and because they violate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. How easy will it be for you to prove that?
Well, in the case of these maps, I think we've got a really good shot at winning. In fact, there have been findings of discrimination, both intentional and in discriminatory effect, every decade since the 1970s. When the Texas legislature has done redistricting, the maps have been overturned. We've seen that regularly. So I got to testify for 10 hours in El Paso federal court on the maps that were passed in 2021 before these same judges.
Yeah.
And we made a compelling case then. These maps are so egregious and they dilute the voting rights of so many Texans that I feel like we've got a very strong chance to overturn them.
Republicans have said that they believe these new maps actually help resolve the 2021 case because they say, look, now there are 4 majority Latino districts in Texas, one of them being 33 up in North Texas. There's a majority black district in Congressional District 30 in North Texas, and some of these districts are more compact. What do you say to that?
Well, I appreciate the party line. Of course they're going to say that. But they also said that the 2021 maps were completely legal and race blind. And now they're changing their tune. So when you have 2 different explanations, right, for your reason for redistricting, I think the public and certainly people who care about redistricting have to ask the question, why are you giving us 2 different explanations? If the prior maps were perfect, then why did you have to do redistricting again? The other point I want to make is that every Latino organization, bipartisan, nonpartisan Latino organizations, don't believe that Latino voters are empowered under the current map. They saw the 35th congressional district, which was a performing Latino district in Central Texas, disappear. They saw the performing Latino district in Houston, that had elected the first Latina in Texas history, disappear. And here in North Texas, the prior 33rd that linked the Latino communities of Dallas and Fort Worth also disappeared. The current 33rd, as it's drawn, will not perform for a Latino candidate. You can look at all of the data related to the voting trends in the new 33rd, and I doubt very, very seriously that Latinos will be able to elect the person of their choice. And why is that important? Why do we care? Well, representation is important, right? And the Latino community is already underrepresented under the existing political maps. We go backwards under these new maps. And if representation wasn't important, there's a fundamental fairness question. There's also the state of the law. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act says you cannot discriminate either intentionally or in effect via redistricting. And it is always the case, we know this, that the party in power, regardless of whether it was Democrats in this or Dixiecrats or Republicans, they will always act in a self-serving fashion, right? But they cannot do that and trample on the voting rights of people who are already underrepresented. And that is what the law says.
You said before that what the Republicans said in 2021, we were blind to race when we drew the maps then, but they've also said that now, they've insisted that when they redrew these maps in 2025, but you said they were different. So what was different? What did I miss there?
Well, I think you're confused because the explanations are confusing. You can't say that that this time around you drew maps that were race blind, yet increased Latino representation. Those 2 concepts don't work. You can't say, hey, we didn't care about race, we just drew the maps. And oh, by the way, there's more Latino representation and that's how we're defending them. It's just not the case. You can't say both things. So that inconsistency leads me to believe that there was another motivation in doing the maps, and that the effect of these maps, according to the analysis done by nonpartisan groups, including the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, who has both Republicans and Democrats and who are suing this case, they believe that between 4 and 5, only 4 and 5 of the 38 districts in the state of Texas will be determined where Latinos are able to elect the candidate of their choice, despite the fact that Latinos are the largest racial and ethnic group in the state and accounted for about 50% of all the growth during the last census.
I was going through some of the paperwork, some of the documents that the Republicans had filed, the state has filed in preparation for the hearing. And they said that, going back to my notes here, they said that they considered, because the Justice Department letter was brought up, right, as a reason for doing this to begin with. And it said that it basically called this letter wrong. And they insist that the Texas legislature did not pass race-based electoral districts for any of those political maps. So what do you make of that? That here, because the Justice Department sent this letter saying that there's 4 coalition districts, including the 33rd that you mentioned.
And that I live in.
And that you live in. And yet, then we have the Republicans in the legislature, the state is saying that wasn't true because we didn't consider race. So what's going on here?
Yet another inconsistency, right? So you can't have it both ways. You can't say that the maps are race blind, but we increased Latino representation, okay? Then you can't say, hey, the whole reason we're redistricting is because the Justice Department told us we had to, but say that the rationale of the Justice Department letter is wrong, which is what they're trying to do. They said it on the House floor. Hey, the reason we're redistricting is because the Justice Department told us we have illegal districts. Yet at the same time, they argue that, but the contents of the Justice Department letter are wrong. And in fact, the map that we passed last time was not violative of the Voting Rights Act. Again, the inconsistencies, the differing and conflicting stories that we're getting from the state abound. And so it causes us as plaintiffs, and it's going to cause the 3-judge panel in El Paso to ask some very serious questions of the state.
You think this weakens their case?
No question.
And let me ask you, because that case, the case you were involved in, going back to the 2021 map, still hasn't been resolved. So why has it taken so long?
It's a great question. I can't read the minds of the justices on the 3-judge panel. I believe that when people do not have predictability about the districts that they're going to be represented in, it denies and reduces the effectiveness of their vote. I think it's a real problem. I also think mid-decade redistricting is a problem. You tell people, hey, here are the districts, exercise your voice, but wait, we're gonna go ahead and change the rules next election cycle. And there's nothing in the law to prevent another mid-decade redistricting coming up next. So I suspect, this is my prediction, I believe the 3-judge panel is going to strike down all or parts of this map. I believe they're going to redraw the map themselves, saying to the legislature, hey, you had your shot in 21, you had your shot in 25, you blew it, all right? There's discrimination either through intent or effect in this map, and we're gonna redraw the lines. They've got to do it quickly, however, before the filing period begins.
November 8th.
November 8th, so that the voters can have some predictability about who the representatives are.
And let's say that happens, right? Let's say the judges do throw that out. Do you think, I mean, Texas is surely going to, appeal that decision, maybe up to the Supreme Court, I don't know. But, does that potentially push back at least the congressional primary races from, you know what I mean? Instead of having a March, maybe it moves back like we saw in 2012.
No, it's a great question, and an appeal from this 3-judge panel would go directly to the Supreme Court. There's precedent for this. In 2011, there was intentional discrimination found in the maps by a 3-judge panel in San Antonio. I testified in that case. And the 3-judge panel not only drew a map, but they also pushed back the election cycle. So that's within the range of outcomes for what we might see from this court.
And that actually, if I'm not mistaken, created the 33rd Congressional District, which has now been redrawn.
Yes, it is a court-drawn district by justices who sat just like these justices are sitting to call balls and strikes on the map passed by the Texas legislature. The last thing I would mention is the Supreme Court, and I know there are thoughts about test cases going up to the Supreme Court on Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. It's been in law since the mid-'60s. They've been supporting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and ordering a number of other states to either redraw districts or have overturned districts in places like Utah and Mississippi. I believe the court is going to be jealously guarding the voting rights of underrepresented people, and that they will either tell the state of Texas, hey, we're not taking the case, and three-judge panel go ahead and draw the maps, or they may take the case and then make a finding and send the maps back to the three-judge panel to draw. And those, again, within the range of outcomes that I can see happening.
Of course, timing is going to be key.
It's got to happen quickly. I know that the trial is set for early October, and
October 1st?
Yeah. And it's going to happen during a condensed window, I think within the first week or two of October. Soon thereafter, I think the judges have been following what's happening in the legislature. They'll look at the briefing, and then they're going to render their decision. The Supreme Court can either take the case or can deny it and say, hey, whatever the three-judge panel says goes, as time is of the essence.
Democratic State Representative Rafael Anchia of Dallas, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack.
We appreciate it.